Welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. It is Jeremy Werner and Joey Wagner. There's a lot going on with men's basketball. We will do a podcast with Derek Piper, kind of a buy or sell. I'm kind of planning for that. We'll talk about the offseason, some of the stuff going around, the team, retention, transfers, all of that. We will break that down. We will get back into spring football at some point here as well because we have a full practice we get to watch on Friday night. Looking forward to that, Joey. But it's time to recap the Illinois women's basketball season, which was phenomenal. They get to win their first NCAA tournament game in 25 years, get to the NCAA tournament for a second time in 3 years. We'll break that down and we'll look ahead to a big offseason of change as a great senior class goes out the door. But Joey, you were just with them in Austin, Texas, and got to see them win that first NCAA tournament game. Of course, fall to number 1 seed Texas, who's really, really good. What was that like, man, to witness that and to see the program take another step up?
Yeah, it was pretty cool because you knew how much that one game meant to this program, meant for, I guess, kind of the last big rung for that senior class to climb before they pass it off as the program keeps pushing forward. I got the sense going into it against Creighton that Illinois liked the matchup. Like, I think they knew that Kendall Bostic could have a day. Obviously, I thought Adalia McKenzie played really well. Genesis Bryant closed out the game. But for as much as you like a matchup, there's still the, man, just get this one vibe that I got. But just kind of talking around, and they knew. Like, they knew that was the step they had to take. They knew that was a big moment for that senior class, and to stay around Austin for a chance to just try your hand against Texas. And they get that. And I thought the way that they got that, they had a double-digit lead at one point. Creighton comes back. Creighton can shoot the heck out of it. They can score the heck out of it. And Illinois had to do what it hadn't done in the previous 2 games. That was close out a game. And they did that against Creighton. Genesis Bryant was huge. Barry Wallace had a really big putback in the fourth quarter. In the third quarter, Brent Shupil had a couple 3-pointers. So they kind of exercised that demon, right? Of, man, what's going on? Is this team out of gas? Can they not close out games? They did that. And you get to Texas and you try it. And I think that was kind of the vibe I got was, man, they are really freaking good. They're a team that could legitimately win a national championship. Go see what you got. All 6 of these players who are healthy. I think I was counting. There's almost as many of the sweatpants team as there is like the players who were dressed, and
pretty talented one too.
That's right. And before we move on, like when you zoom out and think about that this year, like we've talked about, we've gotten so used to talking about the reality of what it was. That was a massive hill to climb. Not only losing Makaira Cook for the season, Gretchen Dolan for the season, you can go back to preseason with Letty, just the sheer number of people you could feel comfortable putting in a game and still winning games like that. That was a huge hill to climb. And they did that. And they got back to the postseason. You got the sense of relief. It was cool to see Kendall Bostic, Makaira Cook, Adalia McKenzie, and Brent Shupil, put the little placard on the bracket to move on in the hallway. And, Shauna Green hugging her coaches and finally getting through that one. It's a cool moment for them and a big moment for the program.
Yeah, 22 wins, which is one of the best in program history. It's the most dating back to 2000, which it seems like that was the last year Illinois did a lot of these things that they were doing 25 years ago when Teresa Grentz was here. But yeah, even the Texas game, Joey, they weren't scared. I thought they played well for the first quarter and kind of started slipping away at the end of the second quarter. And they didn't have as much length, didn't have as much athleticism, and just overall talent, and mostly depth. I mean, the depth that they got through some of these things this year was pretty unbelievable. So let's dive into the season, because given the injuries, given the lack of depth, right? I mean, we talk about Makaira Cook and Gretchen Dolan, but Letty Vasconcelos, who's going to be probably their starting center potentially, or at least someone who's going to play 15 minutes so that Kendall Bostic could play a little bit of the 4. She's gone for the entire season. Jasmine Brown Hager missed some games and was basically limping at the end of the season. If we grade this season, it's hard not to give them an A, given that this is the best season in 25 years. They win an NCAA tournament game, and they do that despite everything going against them injury-wise. So I can't not give them an A for this season.
Yeah, I don't know what, like maybe it's an A and not an A plus had they closed out a couple of those Nebraska and Michigan wins down the stretch, or or steal one in LA. We say that, steal one from a number 1 seed on the road. Like, that's not, what are we talking about here? But yeah, it's an A for this team for all the reasons that you mentioned. It was the next step in the program, and they did that while really, I mean, you're talking players logging 36 to 40 minutes nightly because there's no better option. It's not like Shauna Green and her coaching staff were just being stubborn and playing the seniors that had been through it all. There were just not a lot of options who readily, you could maybe argue Haven Smith could have stolen a few minutes here or there, especially against more physical posts who are true posts. I think that's a reasonable argument to make. Maybe you could argue Corey Allen could have had a couple other minutes here or there. That's fine. But for the most part, they played who they had. And remember, Barry Wallace had a wrist injury that kept her out for, I think, 6 weeks at the beginning of the season. So it's really just navigating through all of that and losing your senior point guard in Micaiah Cook. That is tough. And then Genesis Bryant just steps in like it's nothing. Losing Gretchen Dolan, who you and I are very, very high on. We'll talk about her and Barry Wallace. I think those are 2 really great cornerstones of this program moving forward. And you just keep going. And Barry Wallace plays like a 5-star. Jasmine Brown-Hager, we're probably not talking enough about her and what she did in terms of spot point guard minutes here or there. The way she defended, effectively limping through the final stretch of the regular season and the postseason, she was exceptional. Everything you could have hoped for when you got her out of the portal. So yeah, A, man, easy A, and you could make an argument for A+. But if you want to knock him for losing senior day to Michigan and blowing it against Nebraska, fine. But it's an easy A.
I was just thinking, somebody asked me this the other day, Joey, if this team was healthy, what would have been the difference if Micaiah Cook and Gretchen Dolan were here the same year? And the thing I look at is those final 2 games, Michigan, Nebraska. I think they win those just because they have more depth. They have more firepower where it's not all on Genesis Bryant and Kendall Bostic and Adalia McKenzie to kind of do this. Obviously, Barry stepped up late in the season, but just to have more people rotating in, more options that can really prep you up at the end of games, I think that's the difference. But I mean, they won 10 of 11 games after these injuries. So their response, it was fight or flight. And man, they fought and they came back. So maybe they get those 2 wins. Maybe they beat Minnesota, right? But maybe they're a 6 seed. That's a difference. I don't know if that gets them to the Sweet 16 though, because as we saw against Texas, I think as we've seen in women's basketball, the difference between the top 15 and the next 15 or 20 teams, it seems like it's a pretty big chasm of talent, length, depth, athleticism. You saw that going up against UCLA and USC. Illinois could hang for 3 quarters, but that 4th quarter, they just kind of ran out of gas. So Illinois beat some good teams this year. I mean, Iowa, Maryland, some pretty good teams there, and they competed with some other good ones. But I don't know if they get to a Sweet 16 healthy, but I think they win a couple more games.
Yeah, I think the 2 games that you pointed out, Michigan, Nebraska, certainly come to mind. You could go back to Minnesota and Washington when they lost those back-to-back games that really kick-started that run that ultimately pushed them really into the postseason. But I'm with you. If you look at the Sweet 16 right now, 13 of the 16 teams are the top 16 seeds. So 1 through 4 seeds, and the other 3 or 5 seeds. Like, there is a really big gap between the top of the top and that next wave. And I would put Illinois very much in that next wave. The rest of the top 25, 16, let's say for 35, 16 through 35, right? Like, there's a gap between those 2 spaces there. So I don't know that those 2 would push you in to the Sweet 16. As you mentioned, maybe you're a 6 seed and you get an LSU. I mean, that's still tough, right? Like, you don't want that. And you get Oklahoma, you get Notre Dame. That's a tall task, right? I mean, there's still a gap there. And those are really good programs we just talked about. I mean, Notre Dame walloped what I think is a good Michigan team, 76-55 in the second round. Oklahoma beat Iowa 96-62. Those first and second round scores, especially the second round, really aren't that close in a lot of ways. Kansas State, shout out to Kansas State, to Maryland for their upsets. Tennessee, but you're talking about a 5 beating a 4, right? I mean, we're just kind of splitting hairs here. So yeah, maybe you get the double bye in the Big Ten tournament with those 2, and you do have a top 4 finish in the Big Ten to hang your hat on, and that looks great, right? But I I think at the end of the day, that top 16, that Sweet 16 is a really, really big challenge to break into, and it takes time in program building.
All right, let's put a bow on what was a sensational senior class. What an impact they made on this program, and we can go over the stats, Joey. But just the fact that they go from a 7-77 program under Nancy Fay to what they become under Shauna Green, their legacy is winning. Their legacy is leaving behind a foundation of a strong foundation for Shauna Green, not just competing, but actually winning games that matter, winning a WBIT, getting to 2 NCAA tournaments, winning an NCAA tournament game, beating Iowa 2 times in 3 years, beating Maryland for the first time in program history. There's not one single player. I mean, I think one comes close that gets close to getting their jersey really up in the rafters, but it feels like this group of 5 seniors, like they should just have a shared jersey, like hanging in the rafters at some point because of what they meant for this program. I mean, to do things that haven't happened in 25 years, and it's take Illinois from the bottom, the cellar of the Big Ten, to where now it's like they're a top half Big Ten program is pretty insane, and such a legacy. I know we've talked about them all the time, but can't talk about them enough.
Yeah, the one who comes close for the record is Bostic, the all-time leading rebounder and double-doubles leader in program history.
She ends her 4-year Illinois career with 1,416 points, 1,352 rebounds.
I think she's third all-time in the Big Ten as well in total rebounds in Big Ten history. But she would be someone who, you kind of look like, okay, what criteria does she fit? We know the criteria. I believe, as far as I've asked around, it's the same as the men's criteria. So none of these seniors fitted in name, right? But
All-American, Big Ten Player of the Year, stuff like that, right?
Right. But they do, I'm with you. Like if you just put one, kind of jersey up there for all of them, I don't really know where to start with them because, you and I read a lot, right? Like we consume a lot of content. And sometimes like and here goes this class of seniors that, man, they were really important. And you read it and you're like, I mean, okay, they were good, right? And you don't want to get caught in the trope of every senior class is the most important thing that's ever happened, because sometimes it's just not true.
Yeah.
But so I found myself down there in Texas a lot, like writing about it. I'm like, man, if you were just a casual observer, would you be like, yeah, okay, buddy, like we get it, we understand. But if you know, and if you followed it, and if you paid attention to what this program was, which was terrible, I mean, just awful, to what it is now, obviously Shauna Green and her coaching staff are really stinking good. Kendall Bostic didn't leave. Adalia McKenzie didn't leave. Brent Shoup-Hill followed Shauna. Makaira Cook followed Shauna. I don't want to overlook Makaira's role in building this program because she didn't play the back half of this season. It was a huge role, and she was hugely important in this program being where it is and where it's growing to. And then Genesis Bryant, I mean, she was about ready to quit, right? She was ready to quit basketball, comes here and has all of this, and they take this program to a place that you thought it would get to. You hire Shauna to get there and to be at that moment. But I don't know that, and we talked to Josh in Austin, Josh Whitman, you don't expect it like this soon. And it's because those seniors didn't leave. They came back. They used their COVID year in the case of 3 of them. They didn't go try to cash in somewhere and no, hey, I say that. Cash in. I'm not sitting here saying every player cashing in the portal is a bad thing, but these players could have left. These seniors could have left. They could have made good money somewhere else. They stayed at Illinois and got it back to where it is. So we talk a lot about it, and sometimes I'm like, man, give it a rest a little bit in my brain. But we talk a lot about it for a reason, because they're really, really meaningful, and they changed the trajectory. We talk about it with Jen, and I think about this a decent amount. In an ideal world, with Shauna Green, in Shauna Green's ideal world, you don't need another senior group to change your program, right? Like you need them to push it forward. You need to keep growing, but you don't need a new senior group to give you credibility as a program. And that's what these guys did. And in a lot of ways, Jeremy, they gave Shauna credibility. Not that she was not a credible coach, but she went from mid-major to the Big Ten, and she won immediately. And she's a really good coach, and she puts a really good coaching staff together. But it helps when you have these seniors who stay around and buy in and grow together. and make Illinois a viable option to win early in her tenure instead of taking 4 or 5 years to get to that point.
Coming into this season, Joey, there were 32 players in Illinois program history that had scored 1,000 points. Now Genesis Bryant is in that group. Kendall Bostic is in that group. Makara Cook is already in that group. Adalia McKenzie was already in the group. 4 of the 34 players who have scored 1,000 points were in this senior class, right? Like that's amazing. Like that impact shows it. But then again, what shows it the most? 30 and 24 in the Big Ten, 2 NCAA tournament appearances, a postseason championship after taking over a 7-77 program. Unbelievable senior class. All right, Joey, but as we look forward, what were the best parts or what was the most promising developments for the future of this program on the court this year?
Barry Wallace. I mean, she's got to be number one on that list. Gretchen Dolan would be right up there too had she played more than 8 games. And Shauna Green at times during the season had talked about this. You know, you put Barry Wallace out there on Cheyenne Sellers against Maryland, and her position lends to really, really difficult individual defensive matchups in the Big Ten. And Shauna said candidly, like, hey, if we're healthy, I don't know. Like I told Barry, I don't know if I'm going to have you in these spots. But they had to. They had to put her out there. She's got the length. She's got the athleticism. She's really, really skilled. And she got a chance to grow through some normal freshman growing pains, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. She got a chance to be, I don't know, featured player, but was someone that Shauna Green called big plays for in key moments and got to have those that spotlight to succeed or to not succeed or however it goes over the course of a freshman year. So she's got to be one, just in the way that you look at her as a legitimate cornerstone who watched those group of seniors figure it out, grow through the course of the year, handle adversity. Like she is a prominent voice on this team now. And Jasmine Brown-Hager, I know we talked about her, Jeremy, but I really was impressed with her and her toughness. I think she's got that McKenzie-like ability defensively to step into that role. And that's a big role. Like Adalia McKenzie was really, really good on the defensive side of things. And I think Jasmine Brown-Hager can step into that and be still a scoring threat. She averaged like 8 points a game this season, just north of that. And someone who played some on the ball, probably not her primary position, but just to have that experience going into next season and beyond is really big. So just the way that those two played, knowing that Gretchen Dolan told me she's for sure coming back next season. As an aside, it's very weird to do that in the locker room. To have to ask that. Like it's 2025, it's our job. We've got to ask. It is a very weird thing to have to do, but got to do it.
Yeah, because it's legitimate and doesn't mean that everything they tell you in that post-game locker room.
Correct.
I know some people have said like we shouldn't be in there. I disagree with that. They're going to be pro someday. Most of them are getting paid. Like that's what you got to deal with. And it's just part of what it is because all these fans want to know, are you coming back? That's our chance to ask it. And
yeah, because we might not talk to these players for 4 months, right? I mean, it could be quite the gap in time.
We don't love it personally, but part of the job. First 9 games for Barry Wallace this year, 5.4 points, 2.8 rebounds in 18 minutes per game. Then the injuries happen. Her injury happened. She comes back, Joey. Last 16 games for Barry Wallace, 11.1 points per game, 3.3 rebounds, 40% from 3 for a 6-1 win. Really important there in 30 minutes per game. And if you just watched the UCLA, USC, Texas games, there's one player that just looked like they belonged for sure out there. I mean, Kendall had some good games. Genesis had some big moments. Adalia had some moments. But it's like Barry Wallace looked like she could have played for any of those teams, right? She looked like a 5-star prospect. And the type of size, length, skill, and I thought a toughness and a confidence late in the season, Joey, that said, this could be your star player. So I think she's probably going to have to go through some growing pains of being number 1 on the scouting report and being that star player next year. But she looks every bit a 5-star prospect who's going to be that next 1,000-point scorer. Then you mentioned Gretchen Dolan, who's averaging 11, 12 before that knee injury cost her for the season. She's a bucket getter. And we knew that coming in, playing up in Buffalo, New York, when she averaged like 40 points per game as a senior.
That's not an exaggeration. That's literally it.
Yes, like literally 40 points. I'm not doing that to be hyperbolic here. She's wired to score. And I feel like she can be if healthy, and she continues her ascent from where she was earlier in this year, I think she can be one of the Big Ten's best scorers. And she's got size to her as a guard who can handle it a little bit. And she looked very comfortable being a kind of an offense run through her kind of player. So those are two foundational pieces. And you mentioned Jasmine Brown-Hager, who really stepped up. Once Makaira went down, playing all these minutes, and it felt like her confidence went up later in the year as a scorer, Joey, but she definitely gives you some size, some toughness, that grittiness that you're going to miss with Dalia being gone. So, yeah, that's a really good 3 players to kind of build around. And if there's one really positive silver lining of these injuries, it was Jasmine and Barry really getting put into roles that they're going to be put into this year. Not completely, because they're going to be counted even more, but to be put in those roles where the team counted on them to win games, that could be really huge for next year and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's kind of how you have to look at it, the way that it goes, right? Is those two got to step into really, really big roles for this team and grow through some growing pains. So those are part of it. I do want to bring up Barry Wallace real quickly. Bartorovic allows you to sort by top 50 opponents. So Barry Wallace against top 50 opponents, it doesn't break down the points per game, but she shot 42% on threes. She shot 57% at the rim, 41 on close twos, rather, 41% on far two. So it's not like she was just, putting up big numbers against your Northwesterns, Penn States, Wisconsins of the Big Ten. She did that, and she passed the eye test, right? Like, I think you mentioned it. You definitely mentioned it. The West Coast trip, the Texas game, she looked like, okay, that's the 5-star McDonald's All-American who got a chance to go through it, to learn from some of those seniors. Think about, for her, after Jasmine went down with that hamstring injury late in the year, it's 4 seniors who turned the whole program around, and Barry Wallace in the starting 5. Like, that next wave of talent. So I'm really eager to see what she develops into and how she continues to develop. And same with Jasmine, because I think she's I just don't want to overlook her in this. And especially because the last part of her season, if you watch, you were probably like, what in the world? She was basically on one leg as they got into the postseason. I still think she played pretty well. I do want to add Haven Smith.
Yeah.
She's a 6'6" freshman. Could have argued for some more minutes here or there. I thought, she got thrown in the kind of the thing you think of when you think of her this year. She gets thrown out there at UCLA with Kendall Bostic in foul trouble. And, oh, by the way, go guard Lauren Betts, which is a total nightmare for anybody in college basketball. And Haven Smith wasn't perfect, but I thought she held her own. I thought she kind of annoyed Lauren Betts a little bit. She had a big putback at the end of the half. She told me, so that gave some confidence that, hey, that extra work I'm putting in with Kylie Fletcher, with the coaches, with Kat Beasley, who's her position coach, you see that pay off. Like, maybe you're not in there every game, but when you go out there and you have that moment, that's a confidence boost. And you knew she was going to take some time. The big freshmen take time, freshman bigs take time. But she was a sponge with Kendall Bostic. Kendall Bostic, to her credit, was really kind of took her under her wing and wasn't afraid to be that mentor-like role for Haven Smith. And if you want to learn from anybody in the post, that's your person to learn from, is Kendall Bostic. So I think it's a big summer for her to keep that development. Her and Letty could be the most size we've seen in the post for the Illini in some time. And so it's a name to continue to monitor, even though she didn't play a ton this year. I think there's a lot there, and she's certainly physically ready for it.
My guys, do you ever lift a little too hard or just forget to apply your daily deodorant and get hit by a truckload of BO from all directions? Does that 3-in-1 shampoo leave you needing a second shower just a few hours after your first? Well, from the founders of Lumi, Mando Whole Body Deodorant is helping men conquer their odor in a new way. Formulated with mandelic acid, Mando has long-lasting 72-hour odor control that actually stops odor before it starts. The best part is, you can put Mando everywhere. Pits, packages, feet, skin folds, back, knees, everywhere. To top it off, Mando's cologne-quality scents were created with men in mind. Pro tip, try their best-selling scent, Bourbon Leather. It's a game changer. Once you experience fresher underarms, a fresher package, and fresher feet, you'll never go back. They got a special offer right now. New customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code and link. Use code Illini at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com with code Illini. Mando just sent me these products, and guys, I got to say, I feel fresher. Deodorant stays. You can smell it all day. It's good, well quality scent there, but also they just have a great deal. Mando Starter Pack is perfect for new customers. It comes with a solid stick deodorant, cream tube deodorant, 2 free products of your choice, and free shipping. And as a special offer for our listeners, new customers get $5 off a starter pack with our exclusive code. That equates to over 40% off your starter pack by using code Illini at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. All right, let's dive into the offseason preview, Joey. Let's stay on the court with the current roster. We talked about Barry and Gretchen. I think both of us are confident that they can be, go-to Big Ten players. The question now is, what are they as leaders, right? Because Kendall Bostic certainly was. Seems like Dahlia McKenzie was the heartbeat of this team on the court sometimes. I mean, you're around this team. You know the leadership impact of all of these girls, but that's a big void to have to replace. So what did they pick up from these seniors about winning, about leading, about carrying on that culture that has changed so much? I think as much as anything, because I know Gretchen and Barry can play. It's about can they be the leaders? And I would throw Jasmine Brown-Hager in that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I asked them about how they learned from those seniors because they spent all that time around them and learning, watching, seeing how they struggled, fought through adversity, kind of figured things out a little bit. And they said, yeah, you learn to be relentless. You learn to do this every day and to appreciate this every day and to grow through it and to have fun. And I think that's a big thing because someone's got to take on that leadership mantle, and you don't want to ideally have to find that in the portal. You want that to come from within. And I think, you look at your Gretchen Dolans, your Barry Wallace's, your Jasmine Brown-Hagers, those three have it. You just got to, find your voice, use your voice, learn kind of when to talk, when to not talk, what to say, how to say it, all of those things that, you run a company, Jeremy, we all kind of talk to people. It takes time to figure out how to do that effectively. And I think to learn from those five in particular is really, really important for them and kind of the subplot of the year, right? Because I really liked how this coaching staff built this roster in the sense of, you're losing 5, so you got to bring in 5 freshmen at least. You don't have to, but that's the route they chose to go. But you also want some bridges. And that's really important to bridge with familiar voices. So your Gretchens, your Barrys, your Jasmines, Haven, is Corey Allen someone in that conversation? I think she could, if I would like to see her kind of try to morph into that Adalia Light type role here, right? And play more on the wing and really lean into that defensive head down, get to the rim style. But you need those voices to carry over and to find that role.
All right, Joe, let's talk about a few of the X factors. You mentioned Corey Allen, which could be one of them, Jasmine Brown-Hager, but really has to be the size here, right? Letty Vasconcelos, Haven Smith, because they lose one of the best post players in program history in Kendall Bostic, a walking double-double, just consistent rock of this program over the last 3 years. Vasconcelos was a top 40 prospect, barely played at Baylor her first year. They're expecting her to play this year. Would have been nice to get her playing time to lead into next year, so we don't really know. But Haven Smith, true freshman, has the size and has the toughness, man. Like there's some moments she's going up against some really, really good Big Ten players where she really battled. So what can we expect out of those two next year?
Well, you got to hope they combine for a center by committee, right? Because I think those two and Manuela Alves is tough now. She is tough, and she's got some bite when she gets here, but she's a freshman center. And as we know, I think she's probably a little bit more ready to play physically, but there's an adjustment process there. And same with Naomi Benson. So we'll get into the portal conversation here shortly, but I'm not getting the sense that it's all out for a big. Like we've seen that from this program in the past. They were all out for a big. They get Camille Hobby. They were all out for a big. They get Letty. That's not the sense that I'm getting right now, that they're super. Now, if the right one calls, or if the right, speed dating, right? It's what it is. If that pairs up, then I think they would obviously look into that and see what that looks like. But I think they're comfortable relying on Letty, on Haven, on Alves, Benson. Barry Wallace played some 4. Sierra Parchment is really, really skilled. She enrolled early. Like you've got a lot of pieces up there. You don't have a lot of experience, but you're seeing, to your point, the X factor of size. you're seeing that start to happen slowly. And I think there's, obviously getting the portal, we'll get into that with some guard possibilities or a guard possibility, but having some more size in the front court where Kendall Bostic, I mean, I don't. She gave up 4 or 5 inches in the post almost nightly, and held her own, more than held her own. Obviously, it was really, really productive and one of the all-time greats in program history. But you're starting to get a little bit more size in that front court. I think you could try to find some on the wings and in the back court. But you're also hoping for big steps forward from Letty, from Haven, from a lot of responsibility or some responsibility on the backs of freshmen. And that's a risk in a lot of ways, but I think they believe in the talent too.
So they get a top 10 recruiting class. They made the most of their improvement. And most of this happened right before this season even happened. So kudos to the staff. We should probably get more into what this staff has done, but Destiny Jackson is the highlight here. 5-star point guard out of Chicago, Whitney Young, kind of built in that Micaiah Cook mode of an undersized guard. We expect her to play right away. So I'll ask you what the expectations of that would be, but they've added more size. Erica Finney, 6-foot guard out of Australia. Sarah Parchment, who enrolled early, 6'3" forward. You mentioned Alves, 6'3", 6'4", tough in the post, center out of IMG Academy. She's number 82 in the country. So they've added plenty of size. Namely Benson, another one, 6'2", 6'3" forward. Out of Ohio. So what do we expect? Like, how big of an impact can this freshman class make right away? Because there's a lot of top 100 talent here, and a couple of them that are top 50.
Yeah, you need them to make an impact. Destiny Jackson's going to play. I still think they're going to shop around for an experienced point guard, and we'll dive into that conversation. But she's going to have some keys to this offense, to this team. How many keys, I guess, if we're thinking in like does anyone still use the janitor key thing, or is it just all a fob anymore? I don't know.
I don't know, man.
But yeah, I mean, she's going to have a chance to run this team and to be a focal point, but I think they're going to try to have insurance policies and definite ready to play guards around her. Finney, I am really, really eager to see. She was another early enrollee. She can shoot the heck out of it. Like she missed maybe 1 or 2 in like an open practice, and someone said, someone's got to check those rims because this doesn't happen. She was one of the best shooters in Australia. She came over. I know there's more to her game that she wants to showcase, that Illinois knows she can showcase, whether that's as a very part-time facilitator, her off the bounce game. As you mentioned, she's a 6-foot guard. And I think just having that experience of being here for the second semester, learning from this group, seeing them go through adversity, spend time with Kylie Fletcher, spend time with position coaches, can continue to just get acclimated to everything that this is. We do get lost in that sometimes, don't we? Like the adjustment period, you're just so used to this being such a transactional model, like high school, freshman, go be great. And like there is an adjustment period that comes with that in every sport. So to get there, that's why we just talked with Brett Bielema yesterday, and getting guys in January is a big deal. Basketball is harder to do, right, because the calendar and the way that it goes. But if you can get players in December, January, that's really, really helpful. Same with Parchment. I would think that she's someone who's going to contribute next season. And then you probably need one of an Alves or a Benson to be another center, another big. I think Benson's probably got some more versatility to play the 4. Alves is probably closer to a true 5. But you're going to need them. The portal is going to tell us how much you need to rely on them. But you don't need them to come in and be the no doubt leader. I think Jackson's got that personality in her. I think her position lends that to be that and to find that role. But you have established voices coming back. So I think that part of it is probably taken care of. But yeah, I would expect 2, 3 of them to play and probably meaningfully. And I guess I'd say 2 or 3 to play meaningfully. I would imagine they'll see what that front court and how that shakes out when everyone gets on campus.
Yeah, Destiny Jackson, number 28, according to 24/7 Sports in the country, 6-point guard, number 1 prospect in Illinois. If you've watched her, she's a playmaker, undersized, so finishing at the rim could be an issue. But Micaiah Cook certainly showed that playmaking. Genesis Bryant later in her career certainly showed that playmaking. But I feel like the difference with her is her ability to be an on-ball defensive menace. That seems to be the scouting report on her is that she can really make an impact with her on the ball defense. So I'm sure she's going to be in that point guard rotation.
Oh,
and going to be a really big impact. So that'll be a fun one to watch. All right, Joey, before we wrap up, they will be busy in the transfer portal. That has already begun. What are their transfer portal needs right now?
Yeah, I would expect an experienced point guard. And again, the caveat, Jackson's going to play, but you saw what happens when the amount of people that you feel comfortable facilitating starts to dwindle, and you don't want to be in that position again. And you don't want to have to put the weight of the world on Destiny Jackson's shoulders to come in and be that absolute, no doubt, star point guard as a freshman. So having, if you can find an experience, is that a transfer up candidate? Is that, a Genesis Bryant path where maybe there's more production you can unlock from a high major player? I would expect that to be something they focus on. I think combo guard, a Genesis type, right? I mean, Genesis was a shooting guard. She ended up being that point guard after Makaira was out for the season. That's got to be a priority, because you feel good with, Barry Wallace at your 3 or 4, Gretchen at your 2 or 3. But you probably want a few more facilitators, a few more offensive hubs on that team. I thought Adalia McKenzie unlocked some of that in her game late in the season as a facilitator. Those are two needs. I think there would be, another defender on this team of the Adalia McKenzie type role. Jasmine Brown-Hager can step into that, but you want to keep collecting those and get as many as you can. Is that on the wing? Is that in the backcourt? And as we mentioned, does the right center come calling? If she does, then, or post rather, if she does, then great. I think that's a plus if you can find that, but you don't have to go at all costs for that. I will throw out a name that I think is really interesting, Jeremy. Skylar Jones, Arizona sophomore guard, 6-foot guard, is in the portal right now. Illinois was all in on her out of Chicago. Whitney Young a couple of years ago. I think they were down. They were on the short list of finalists.
Whitney Young, same place as Destiny Jackson.
Stunning, huh? Another Mac Irvin. I think that's someone to watch. I would imagine Illinois is going to pursue her. She's probably going to have a fair list of suitors. She averaged 10 points, 1.2 steals, a couple assists, a couple rebounds. She showed she could be a 3-point shooter. She's not your point guard, but that's that combo guard that we talked about that I think you could really make work with. And she's very, very long. She's got that. Yeah, she's got that size on the perimeter. I just bring her up because I know Illinois really pushed for her coming out of high school, and she really listened to Illinois. That was before this pitch really turned in to what it is. So I think there's familiarity there. The home state pitch, similar to what Jasmine Brown-Hager, very, very similar in the sense of pursue her very heavily out of high school. You're not really established yet. She goes to a more established program, resurfaces in the portal, and you keep those connections. So that's one I think they're going to be interested in. I think they're going to push for. I'm still trying to get some details.
Same class, right? As Jasmine Brown-Hager, same AAU team.
Yeah. There were very few uncommitted in-state prospects when Shauna Green and this coaching staff took over. And I cannot remember if there was a decommit with Skylar Jones that led her to Arizona. Jasmine was one of the few definite uncommitted, and I know they ended up very far down the line on Skylar Jones when she was in high school. So watch her name. Maybe they get, I'm not trying to give a subtle spoiler. I just, all the things kind of make sense there. Right. Yeah. And I think that's someone to monitor because she fits a need. So, well, that would be a pretty significant one for Illinois. Like a really, really significant addition. And up there, if they were able to do it, up there was one of the more significant portal additions of the short tenure here with Shauna Green and this coaching staff.
Yeah, almost 11 points, 3 rebounds, couple assists, shoots 49%, as you said, 35% from 3. Established veteran that you can plug and play and give Barry and Gretchen and Jasmine another veteran to play alongside with, man. And you could have some fun offense there. And again, you're getting longer defensively. You can maybe do a little more things, be a little bit more versatile. So yeah, that's the next step of this program, right? Is getting longer, getting deeper, but being more versatile defensively and having more people that can get to the rim and finish. Because it's weird because Adalia McKenzie could get to the rim almost at will at times, but it's just that's the next step to compete with the best teams in the Big Ten is getting longer and just getting deeper in talent.
Yeah, watch the Sweet 16 that begins on Friday and you'll see a very common theme. Like there was a lot of length. Kendall Bostic was an awesome post. Shauna Green, said, hey, she's listed at 6'2", but let's be real here. She's probably 6'1". Now you're looking, Barry Wallace is listed at 6'1". Skylar Jones is listed at 6 foot. Gretchen Dolan is 5'11". Like now you're talking about that on the perimeter, and that's just the evolution of the program. They can win. Yeah, Letty is. Well, you hear that and you're like, okay, they are huge. They are very, very tall. And just it sticks out. Haven went in against Texas. It's like, oh, you look like physically what they look like in the post, and that's encouraging big picture. But yeah, length is the name of the game. That's what it is, and Illinois has got to get to that level. I still think you can take the point guard out of that conversation when you're talking length, because this staff has shown it can thrive with undersized points, especially if they're dynamic, like Makaira Cook, like Genesis Bryant, like Destiny Jackson. So it doesn't mean you've got to have a huge point, but if you can stack 5'11" to 6'1" on the wings around them and get big in the post, then you're starting to really talk about something.
Let's wrap this up, Joey, of just this. What can you say about this staff? Because in 3 years, this program has gone from irrelevant to there were 6,000 people, 7,000 people at some of these games late in the season, right? Like that's a pretty amazing accomplishment to get a top 10 recruiting class, number 7, I believe, by ESPN. And if they're able to get somebody like Skylar Jones, even Letty last year, Jasmine, those are significant transfer portal additions. That
Kyra.
Yeah.
You can't just give her a pass because she played for Shauna, right? Like she would have been heavily recruited on the open, if she really, really opened it up out of Dayton.
But I think Jasmine, leaving Mississippi State after 1 year to come to Illinois, just shows the level of the program. Letty, top, was McDonald's All-American, something like that. Like her coming to this program is really impressive. And now you can raise that bar again because people look at Illinois differently than they did even when they first got here, this staff. So I don't know. I'm just opening it up to you. Like, what can you say about the staff that makes them good or has allowed them to do this?
Yeah, what makes them good, I think like Genesis is a really good example. Is they're not afraid of the basics, and they got back to basic stuff in that 16-day break, and like they are fundamentally driven. Shauna Green talks about box outs like it's her favorite part of the basketball game, right? Like those things are really meaningful, and you see like they're tough. They're tough as heck because they have those fundamentals that they truly believe in. And Shauna Green's really interested in the mental aspect of the game. Like that's probably one of the things I need to sit down and talk through with her, because that's something she brings up quite a bit. And it's like an identity that she wants her team to be as tough as they come, to be able to weather the small storms that come in every single basketball game and to come out the other side of it. And in the process of building that, and all of this sounds very cliche, right? Like I think you could talk to most coaches who would have those same principles, but I think Shauna Green and this coaching staff, Calamity McIntyre, Kat Beasley, Brittany Anderson, Liza, Emily Durr, like those 5 do a good job of instilling confidence in their players and giving them. Now, look, this year you had to give them room to fail and to not play perfectly because you don't really have any other options. But they allow them that space to not be to struggle, to grow, to be better. And all the while just instilling that confidence in them that, hey, shoot it. Like, Jen, I don't care that you averaged 2 points in North Carolina. Like, you are someone we believe in and our focal point, a cornerstone of this team, of this rebuild. So I think they do a really, really good job of just getting those players to believe in themselves. Mm-hmm. I think once you do that, you can unlock a lot more in their games. And they're good recruiters. Like, you don't get the number 8 staff or the number 7, 8 recruiting class in the nation because you just hope and pray. You go to sit in all these weekend AAU tournaments and you build those connections and you're real and you're honest. And Calamity McIntyre does a lot of the lifting on the recruiting front. And she's really, really good. Like her and Destiny Jackson have an incredibly good relationship. That matters when you're fighting the programs that you're fighting for Destiny Jackson, for Sierra Parchment, for Manuel Alves, for Erica Finney, for Naomi Benson. Like building those relationships is meaningful. And Shauna Green has said a number of times, like we were told no a ton early on in this. Jasmine Brown Hager told you no, but you kept that. You just a real human. When someone does something that you don't like and you don't lose your, blow your top about it and burn a bridge, like you keep that available. So when she's in the portal out of Mississippi State, you're a viable place to come back. And then you can keep building and expanding on the talent that you saw as high school recruits. So they just get it. That's probably, we talk about that a lot with coaches that have success, is maybe it doesn't mean something if like that phrase alone doesn't probably mean a lot to a lot of people. They just get it. So maybe you can put it in better terms than I can, but when the coach gets it, you see it, right? Like you can visibly see in the way that they go about things that, oh yeah, they understand what they're doing. Josh Whitman, and real quickly, Jeremy, I just kind of threw it to you and backed off of it. He said Shauna's a relentless competitor.
Yeah.
And I had a quote. He said there's a lot of kind of unstructured time as a head coach. What do you do with it? And it's going out and recruiting. It's developing. Those, you and I read between the lines a little bit on some of those quotes, but Brett Bielema has
the original hires. Yeah.
Brett Bielema has that. Brad Underwood has that. Shauna Green and her staff have that. I think you've seen in the way that Shauna has built her coaching staff, that Calamity McIntyre left Texas to come back with Shauna Green. Brittany Anderson left Stanford to come with Shauna Green. Kat Beasley followed her. Like that tells you something too, doesn't it? And how you build out a coaching staff.
Yeah, I think that there's a few things here I would hit on. Like, one, you got to have the support. And Josh Whitman has given his coaches all the support in the world, financially, resources, facilities, now NIL, all of that. So they have that good start. Because that's not true of every Big Ten women's basketball program, right? Like most men's basketball, Iowa, Minnesota got those questions right now. Almost every football program at this point, now that Purdue is on board, like that, most of them have that buy-in, that financial support, but not every women's basketball program still has that. So I think that really matters. You mentioned the competitiveness. I think you have to live this thing, man. You can't just, clock out and decide, I don't want to recruit. You got to recruit all the time. And if you want to win, you can't get outworked. And Lovie Smith, I felt, got outworked. I think Nancy Faye at times got outworked, and then she didn't win games. The biggest thing as a coach, right, is like you got to have buy-in. And that you got to find a way to get people to buy into you. And that's the way you approach them. That's the relationships you build. That's your demands. All of those things go into it, but you got to get buy-in from your own players, your own staff, all of that. But then you got to get buy-in from recruits as well. So that daily getting buy-in and connecting with people and, really just motivating them to be their best and to get the best out of them. That's huge. And that's very vague, but that's what good coaches do at the base of it, right? Is they get the most out of these people and they get them to buy into what they do, the role they play, and to get them to their program and to get better every day. So I think the staff has obviously shown that they're good at all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And that shows up in who you surround yourself with and who chooses to follow you, who chooses to stay, who chooses to join you, whether it's a transfer as the coaching staff. Yeah, I feel bad saying it because it doesn't make a lot of sense for a lot of people, but hopefully it comes through and you hear them talk like, okay, they get it. They understand what it takes to do this, and it's a lot of work. I think Shauna has done a really good job, and her staff and her players, of being out in the community, being accessible. Like that matters when you're taking crowds of 200 to 6,000.
Yeah.
Right. You've got to you've got to have a really good product and something that people want to watch, and they've done that. But you've got to be accessible and you've got to put yourself out there. And Shauna Green doesn't say no to interviews. She just doesn't. And maybe that
is so important with that program, especially. I think football and basketball, it still matters, right? Like we're seeing it with Iowa. That fan base lost their connection with Fran McCaffrey because I don't think he worked hard enough at it. I don't think Lovie Smith, after his initial hiring, worked hard enough to connect or cared enough to connect to the fan base to give maybe a little bit of a benefit of the doubt at times. Like Shauna is getting the benefit of the doubt. She's getting buy-in. She's out there. She's putting herself out there, getting her players out there, and she takes every opportunity. Like we don't ask all the time with Shauna, but whenever we ask to bring her on this podcast once or twice a year, she's coming on. She's talking about her program.
And she's real.
Yeah. And she talks to you and like she gives you actual insight into her program and talks about the real things that are happening. And, when it's good, when it's bad, recruiting, all of that. Like, I think that's really important to get buy-in. And one, winning obviously gets people to buy in, but then when you're actually talking about your program and letting people know about the personalities, letting people know about where they're at and that she wants more fans, like that she's honest about that. It's like, we need more support from you. I love that. That's a really important part of that program.
Yeah, and I think, probably a reference point would help it. So they beat Creighton, right? And you're in Austin. There's a lot of Texas columnists, reporters, and post game for whatever reason. That's apparently the time to ask about playing Texas instead of the next day when we have media availability. That's probably a conversation, Jeremy, for another day. But someone said, hey, you think you guys might be underdogs against Texas? Some coaches do that. We don't care about what anyone – like Sean's like, yeah, probably. I have to imagine that's a really good team.
Or the 8 seed, they're 1 seed. Yeah, I'd say that's an underdog.
Yeah, so like just stuff like that, like just you can tell when someone's being real and not just coach speaking just through the end of the, just kind of waiting out, filibustering the end of a media appearance or a press conference. So it's just from our job, that's something to really, really appreciate about them. So yeah, Arrow pointed up on a season that we've already given an A. Like I think, just to put a bow on this really quickly, Jimmy, if I could, there is something to be said about the consistency of what that 5 senior group brought and where they brought this program. Like that is, it can't be overstated. We've tried for 49 minutes. I don't even know if we've done a good enough job of doing that. But there's, on the flip side, there is also the excitement if you're a fan of the program about where it's going and how you're recruiting to fit the, take those, to be in the conversations and to continue to push forward. And that's not taking anything away from a senior class that was so good, but they're new is exciting, new faces, new talent, new length, new all of this. Like there's something invigorating about that and getting there. And I think that's kind of what this offseason and next season is probably not going to be as smooth sailing as this was, right?
I was going to end there. Like the expectation for next year, I don't know if it's NCAA tournament, but I think contention for it would be great. Middle of the pack, Big Ten, but there's going to be growing pains, right? There's certainly going to be growing pains, but this team should be deeper, should have more talent top to bottom, but it's just the lack of experience, the lack of known leaders. It's just going to lead more towards, I wouldn't say it's kind of like the men's basketball team because that's a different level of talent, I think, comparatively to what the women will have next year. But I think we all understand there's going to be growing pains. If they made an NCAA tournament next year, undeniable success, because then you're building on that with the same roster probably the next year and a lot of it the same year after that. So this is the next chapter of the program that's really exciting. There might be some steps back, but there's also, it could be the group that elevates because of the talent level that is there that Shauna Green's staff has built.
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think they would probably tell you their expectation is NCAA tournament, because you don't want to be, once you get there 2 out of 3, you want to stay there, but you've got to also be real about just a turnover that you're undergoing right now, and the consistency, the talent that those 5 seniors brought you, and now having to relive a little bit of the ups and downs that come with just younger players. So yeah, we'll see it, and some of that will be dictated by what they do and how they do in the portal over the next couple months. But it is exciting to kind of think of the next wave of what this can be, and watching a program still take those natural steps forward in its rebuild.
Great stuff. Joey Wagner, congratulations to you, because you did a hell of a job covering this program and this team this season. I know you're covering it throughout the offseason and into next year, but phenomenal job by you. And I just think it says a lot about the program that we want to invest the resources to cover this program. We want to do a season review, off-season review podcast that almost goes an hour, because it's really interesting. And I find this team and this program a lot of fun to cover, a lot of fun to follow.
Yeah, I do too. It was incredibly fun to be down there, to get to know the people over the last 3 years, especially the senior class, and to keep just building relationships and doing an honest job of covering a program, and a
program that matters now.
Yeah. And hey, listen, we try not to do victory laps. Got better things to do than take victory laps. But we were one of 2 outlets to cover that team, 2 local outlets to cover that team in person in Texas. And to me, that's really meaningful. And to know that it's worth investing in, that's an investment. To do that, it's a time investment, it's a money investment, it's an earned investment from this program, but it's really meaningful for me to be down there. And I know, I've said it on our message boards, and I'll say it again, we're there because, one, there's an interest, and two, people care enough about what the heck we say and what the heck we write. And like, that's never lost on me. I know it's never lost on you. It's never lost on Derek to put us in a position where we can go to Austin, Texas for 5 days and cover a program that did something for the first time in 25 years. Yeah, absolutely it does. And to be one of two there is not lost on me. And the investment that we put into it is meaningful. The investment that people put into us is meaningful. And covering a good program is really fun to do. And being in 83-degree Austin, Texas, watching college basketball games outside with some downtime and having a few beers was pretty good reward on that too.
All right. We appreciate you guys listening to the Illini Inquirer podcast. Give us a rating, review wherever you get your podcast. Check us out on YouTube. If you're watching right now, hit that like button, subscribe to us, hit the notifications bell. We'll do an update or two throughout the offseason on women's basketball. We'll have Piper on the podcast tomorrow. We'll talk more about men's basketball. We got a lot going on the site there. Check all that stuff up. If you're not a VIP member, it's a perfect time to sign up. 50% off a VIP subscription. Piper just gave an update. Eric Bossy just gave an update on our message board there, so you can check all the latest there. And we got plenty of Illini football coverage. I had a great conversation with Aaron Henry about his growth year one to year two. Just talked with Lucas Bird, national championship wrestler. So we are going to be locked and loaded at IlliniInquirer.com. But for Joey Wagner, I'm Jeremy Werner. Everybody have a great day. Take care of each other. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Illini Inquirer podcast.